Hey guys, how's it going? Paul Harris here. Welcome back to another one of my videos. Today, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about why it's important for you to try and stay at just one company. So I think there's a big drive at the moment to try and move, get better positions elsewhere. You might be able to climb the employment ladder even quicker if you move from job to job. And I think I've read a number of articles saying how people don't stay at the same job very long these days. So what I thought would be interesting is to talk about the positives of staying in one job, mainly because I've moved around quite a bit and I can see what the negatives were of doing so. So hopefully it's useful for you guys if you're thinking about leaving your job or you're trying to weigh up the consequences. This video should be for you. Let's get into it. So let me just go into some detail in case you haven't seen some of my other YouTube videos. I basically qualified as an accountant at a professional firm. Then I moved after 4 years into a finance analyst role outside of practice, so now into industry, and then from a finance analyst role in an FP&A team. And then I moved from there into a commercial business partnering role. So there was the advantage of firstly leaving jobs that I didn't enjoy doing, and also when you leave from practice into industry, there's generally a boost up in salary, and then when you move around again, you obviously go in for a different salary route again, and you might want a different skill set, you might just not enjoy the company you're at. And I totally get that. If you want to leave because you don't enjoy what you're doing, that's a big driver. People don't say that you actually leave your job, you leave the manager that you work for, because who you work with is generally as important as the kind of work that you actually do. So I get that. If you want to leave because of those sort of reasons, that makes sense. However, having moved from job to job, the big thing that stands in your way in terms of developing long term is that you lose the sense of what you're doing in that sort of company, and particularly if you move from industry to industry. So if you move from working with cars to working with toys, it's a completely different sort of skill set. Same as if you want to move to, say, a company like Pepsi, then it might be a different skill set if you're working from like an engineering standpoint. So every time you move to a different company, you have to bear in mind that you lose that skill set. And that skill set is knowing the systems in their previous company, knowing who you work with, knowing who to contact if you need information, knowing the sort of accounting treatment, knowing how you account for certain things, knowing the different KPIs, knowing the different stats that come with that job, what drives that business. You basically go and you have to learn it all again. Now, you think as being a qualified accountant that is the number one skill set, but it's not. Once you've done accountancy for, say, 3, 4, 5 years, you know that. You know what's needed to do that role. Everyone who's qualified has the same sort of benchmark. It's a good skill to have if you're going from not having it to having it, but once you have it and everyone else has it, then there's not much that distinguishes your ability as an accountant over somebody else's. So you have to look for different skill sets. Now, you think of softer skills like your ability to present and your ability to communicate with people, which is a good skill set. But actually, I think one of the number one skills and what's the most valuable for a company is you to actually understand that company specifically. So even if you're in the same industry and you move to a different job within that industry, you still have to learn, as I said, all those things again that make you valuable in that role. And what I found is, I might have, say, 5 or 6 years experience and come from a professional firm that makes you think, I got this training at a really good company, so I must be very valuable for the next person I work for. But the reality is you could move into a company with an accountancy qualification and like all this background, and it's just really useless because you go in and you still, you're having to ask basic questions. You don't know who you're meant to speak to. You're actually quite a hassle to people when you first begin. In theory, because you have that background, you're very quick and you know how to adapt to that new company quickly. But there's such a learning curve that you might be 6 years of experience, come into a company, and there's someone there who's like an intern who's been there 2 years and is just better than you, really, as an employee, because he knows more about the sort of company that you're working for. And I think that's just sort of what I wanted to express in this video, instead of trying to go over loads of different points, is that when you move from job to job, you bring with it a wealth of experience, but what you lose is that knowledge of that company. And then when you want to go from, say, like a more junior role to a manager role, particularly then, you're taking a step up in terms of that leadership role, and then you're having to learn that sense of skill. But then if you're going into like a more senior management role as well, all of a sudden you have that skill set you kind of have to try and adapt to, whilst also managing a bunch of people who might actually know more about that company than you do, which is then a huge steep learning curve, really. So the benefit of staying at the company you're at is that you, as long as you continue to drive to try and learn more about that business, you become more and more valuable to that company. Now, the problem is some companies might not see that, and it might not be that you have the opportunities there to really, to actually grow and, go into more senior roles, which is a shame, because then you start building up a skill set and then you don't really want to leave because you have that skill set already. But you do become very valuable to that company, moving to different roles and having to, if you move to a different company and having to relearn that business all over again, kind of sets you back 2 years. Because although you've moved and you've got the instant pay rise, the instant hit of moving, there's a 2-year stint where you sort of have to get to know that business to become valuable for it, unless your plan is to just always move. But I always feel there comes a point where you go, well, now I have to kind of stick here for a little while and actually properly engross yourself. But anyway, that's my thoughts. That's why I think it's valuable to stick at just one company, and particularly if you just stick at one industry. I actually thought that was a major concern coming out of a professional firm and being like, do you have to stick to just one industry? And once I make a choice of choosing a career in this kind of industry, am I ever going to be able to get out? And the answer is yes, you can. And it is valuable to have these transferable skills, like I've said, the softer skills, and your ability to convey that you are good at communicating and you've managed to learn a business quite quickly and you're interested in that kind of stuff. That is valuable still, but it's not going to be... you do sort of get pigeonholed, in my opinion. Like, if I was to employ someone, I would see definitely now from working in a company for a longer period of time that it's valuable to just employ someone who knows that industry, because you're having to cut out all the problems of having to train a person from, point zero to where, you want them to be. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that's interesting. If you have thought about that in terms of like moving, is it going to be challenging to learn the industry, and then am I going to be able to move on? Then you can, but it's going to be a learning curve, and people are just going to want to employ people who have already done that industry. So definitely have a think about it. Definitely don't just leave the company you're at because you dislike it. I think I've done that in the past and sort of ended up in that exact situation of being like, well, now I'm in this industry, do I just have to stick to it? Yeah, tricky stuff. Anyway, hopefully you find that interesting. If you did like this video, I'm going to try and make a few more of these kind of just, off the cuff advice, my general thoughts about career stuff. So if you like that kind of thing, subscribe to my channel, like this video. See you next time. Bye bye.